Welcome to my Wardloop guide for Path of Exile. It's a unique build that lets you automate everything and frees you from constant button pressing. If you worry about RSI, Wardloop might be for you. The first thing you need to do is log into Path of Exile, go to game, and make sure your network mode is set to Lockstep. The build will not function if it's not. Before we begin, a very pivotal piece of information. This build will not function if you have any armor at all. You must have literally 0 armor. The Ascendency class of choice will be Pathfinder. You must run this to gain the 3 flask charges every 3 seconds node. The build will not function without this. Your second Ascendency will want to be Elementalist, as well as Path of the Witch. This will allow you to become Reflect Immune, have increased exposure, and most importantly, actually begin your passive tree. In order to begin your Wardloop, you must be level 72 and have at least 1700 life. In order to begin your loop, you require 2 wands. Go to Nessa in Act 1 and buy 2 wands from her. Then take a single Essence of Insanity and use it. This will give you the trigger level 20 Spectral Spirits when equipped. You need 2 of these wands to begin your loop. The next thing you need are 4 jewels to dust. The only stat we care about is reduced skeleton duration. You must have a total of 74% reduced skeleton duration across all 4 of your 2 dust jewels. This is pivotal. It cannot be 1% above or 1% below. 74%. One of the 2 required medium cluster jewels for this build to function is a medium cluster jewel with the passive skill Blessed Rebirth. This must be allocated or your build will not function. The second medium cluster jewel you need is a 6 passive skill increased flask effect duration medium cluster jewel. It must have either 3% increased flask charges gained or 1 passive skill is fasting. Either one of those will allow you to permanently sustain 3 flask Wardloop and begin your journey. This jewel is very cheap or very cheap to craft. I will explain how in the video description. We will be running 2 Heartbound Loops to start our Wardloop journey. Both must be 20% physical and chaos damage quality. This raises the phys damage taken on minion death to 420. Between both rings, this will cause your skeletons to trigger all of your cast when damage taken jewels in a cascading, never-ending loop. Unfortunately, Olroth's resolve is required and it is not very cheap. You must have 42% or less increased charges per use and 20% or more quality. If you don't have this, you will have to drop to 2 flasks in order to sustain your loop. While manageable, it is dramatically suboptimal. The next thing required for Wardloop is a single Brutal Restraint, denoted in the service of Balbala. As long as your Brutal Restraint does not allocate Alchemist's Genius, any Balbala will function just fine. Just be sure you allocate the keystone so you get the Trader node. The Trader is why we use the Balbala. For this next part, you must have specifically leveled skill gems in a certain order in your helmet. The first one must be a level 11 Summon Skeletons, paired with a level 1 Forbidden Rite, both of which are linked to a level 5 Cast When Damage Taken support in your helmet. The Summon Skeletons must be the first socket in the helmet, which is the top left. Remember, for a starting level loop, you need a level 11 Summon Skeletons, a level 1 Forbidden Rite, and a level 5 Cast When Damage Taken. If you are wondering why, it is because Cast When Damage Taken checks your gem links in the order that they've come, starting from top left, which means you want Summon Skeletons to be cast before anything else. The final basic piece to starting your Wardloop is make sure in your links the highest mana cost skill is as close to the bottom of the link as you can get it. For your weapon, that would be Frostbite at the bottom. For your body armor, and this is pivotal, find a Skin of the Lords or Loyal with a blue socket in the last spot, if at all possible. That way you're the lowest mana cost you can get, and that will make your loop much more stable. First, you manually activate your Olroth Flask. Then, you weapon swap to your alternative weapon. Whenever you swap back, your Wardloop will engage. When your mana recoup kicks in, suddenly your loop is off and running and you have to do nothing else. Whenever you turn on Olroth's Resolve, it prevents your ward from breaking but reduces it by 70%. This means any hit that doesn't do more damage than your ward loop does not actually damage your life at all, which makes you effectively immortal to small hits and small damage over time effects. However, that's not all. Because of this effect, we switch to our alternate weapon, and this summons Spectral Spirits. Whenever we switch back, the Spectral Spirits die, and then because our minions died, our Heartbound Loop damages us. That causes us to take 840 damage. Whenever we take that damage, our Cast When Damage Taken with our Forbidden Rite triggers, and it causes Forbidden Rite to damage us for a significant chunk of our life. This triggers our Summon Skeletons. Our Summon Skeletons will spawn, and then because we have the 4 to Dust Jewels, they will immediately die. That means we take 420 damage 4 times. Because we have no armor, we don't mitigate it at all. That also re-triggers Forbidden Rite a second time. Because of this, we take enough damage to trigger the Cast When Damage Taken in our weapon, our body armor, our boots, our helmet, and our gloves again, and suddenly the cycle repeats infinitely. Obviously, this guide is missing a ton of the depth available in the Wardloop build, and that's okay. This is intentionally very entry level so people can get their build running. If you would like more information, join us in the Cast When Damage Taken Discord, which will be linked below. Join us on the forum page and guide. Use any of the at least 24 resources that have been developed to help people min-max their loops, or help us theorycraft new ones. We're doing all kinds of weird stuff all the time, like using knockback and delve. I'll see you in Raid Class.